recording. Let's see. All right, everybody. I believe that we are live and popping. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome on in, welcome on in. I am Stephanie Ray Songbird. It's your girl, Stephanie Ray Songbird, the founder of the Songbird and Me organization, where our mission is to assist during times of crisis. And how do we do that? We advocate for families and individuals who have experienced trauma, and we break cycles that restore them back to their healthy place. If you follow us on Facebook or Instagram or the Songbird and Me, you know that February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, also Black History Month, but let's talk about it. We want to talk about today's panel. It is amazing. We have amazing panelists here, but we need to have this discussion because it's long overdue. Today, we want to talk about what's going on with our teens, those that are experiencing dating violence. How is it impacting our youth in the Black community? And of course, we have subject matter experts here to do just that on today. So y'all put your seatbelts on. Y'all get ready, prepare your hearts and minds. This is going to be an open discussion. So we'll have our panelists speak, and then we'll also definitely open it up for our audience to chime in. We want this to be impactful for those that have children, those that work with youth and young adults. This is a discussion. We need to take the time out. We are making Black history. I want to make emphasis on that. We are making Black history right now because this does need to be discussed. We're thankful for all the pioneers that went before us, but we need to deal with the issues that are in hand that's impacting our community. So right now, let me stop a minute and I want to introduce our panelists today. I have Kenneth Scott, or lovingly called K Scott, and we want to just say welcome to you. K Scott is passionate. He's an advocate for social health. He currently oversees the DVHRT program, and what that is, it's with Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, and it's under the Domestic Violence High Risk Team. Basically, he helps individuals who have caused harm in intimate partner relationships become better partners, parents, and individuals. So welcome, K Scott. Thank you so much for being one of our panelists today. Next, I want to introduce Mrs. Kimberly Randolph Virgil. We're so glad that she's here today. She is the owner and founder of the Power of Healing Counseling Services, LLC. She serves clients from age 15 and up, and she does this virtually. She's been in the mental health field for about 12 years, and she is married and she has 2 beautiful children. So thank you, Ms. Kim, for being here on the panel today. We appreciate you. Last but definitely not least, I want to introduce Ms. Taylor Williams to you, a licensed therapist, and she serves our adolescent community. She is with Majestic Counseling. She's an independent consultant, and she deals with adolescents from ages 13 through 17, and also adults from ages 18 and up. So Taylor, thank you so much for being on the panel and bringing these skills and these tools that we need today. So yes, let's get started. Y'all ready? Now, y'all know normally I have music and all kind of stuff, but this is a serious conversation. It's a Sunday evening. You know, usually we get off on the beats, but no, we need to have this discussion. So we're going to start today. And when those that catch the replay, we'll have information, we'll have resources. I want to make sure you know, if you are a young person that's watching this and you catch the replay, and if you are in a violent situation or a violent relationship, you can text LOVEIS to 22522 and you can get some assistance. As always, there may be adults. I know there's adults watching this and you may be experiencing domestic violence. And so we also have put the national hotline for domestic violence. The number will be in the comments. So you can call if you need some help or you need to get away. So we want to make sure we continue to advocate for that. So let's get this discussion started. The first thing I want to ask before we go really deep into this discussion, can you guys define teen dating violence? What is your definition of teen dating violence?
Basically, I would say that teen dating violence that would be defined in nowadays is some people define it as, well, teens in relationships, they argue and that type of thing. Some people might consider that violence. Other people might consider you putting your hands on somebody and actually physically harming them, but they both can be a problem because both causes scars. One, as far as verbal abuse causes scars that people don't see and are not able to actually identify. And then the physical violence actually causes the physical scars or the damage as far as to the body. So it just depends on what it is that they're actually experiencing at that point in time. But it's a number of ways. And then it can also be financial violence, where if it's where this person feels that this person is superior as far as finances go, then they'll utilize that to actually manipulate and cause harm as well. So it's a number of ways that you can actually define it. But going forward, that's what I would say.
Gotcha.
So I think that it pretty much falls under 3 different categories. There's physical when it comes to touch and physical aggression, hitting, kicking, pushing, that type of thing. There is also a psychological component where it's like emotional abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, controlling, pressure, any type of, pressure. And then there's also a sexual component too, which a lot of people don't often realize is also a form of, manipulation and pressure that teens often face without even realize that they're being pressured to do so. So those are the 3 categories that I would define under domestic teen violence.
All right. Okay, Scott.
Yeah, so just to piggyback on it, there's a lot of great feedback and a lot of great things, but I like to boil it down in like really a simplistic matter. It's just all about how do individuals dictate power and control, right? And so it could be use within physical, it could be emotional, it could be psychological, it could be all those types of things. Any type of leverage that someone can utilize to be able to gain power or control over said person in an intimate partner or a romantic type of relationship is what I would describe something regarding violence.
Very good. And all of you guys hit it on the, hit the head on the nail. It is the power and control. We know that intimate partner violence, domestic violence, things like that is a pattern of controlling and abusive behaviors. And so for teen dating violence, it's the same thing. And I think with intimate partner violence, I want to make sure that we look at the difference for the youth versus the adults when we're having this conversation today, because it's so subtle that a lot of our teens don't realize they are in violent situations. I know that I had put some stats up this week as we were preparing for the panel, and basically violent behavior typically starts between the ages of 12 and 18, way before, actually some stats say younger, way before they even hit their teenage years. And we know that with our Black and brown babies, the way they experience something, relationships look different culturally. And I think we need to talk a little bit about that in this next question. What are some of the stereotypes about teen dating violence and how it pertains to Black and brown youth in the community? What are some of those stereotypes and misconceptions that maybe our Black and brown youth deal with?
I think the normalization of, like, speaking from a male perspective, I think the normalization of putting our women down, like you hear about it all the time in entertainment, you calling women bees and, all that type of stuff, excuse the, the French, but, I think it's that normalization of making a woman feel less than. And so as the kid grows up, he's like, oh, I've been hip to this before. Like, not only do I see it in my home, but I see it, in entertainment. People get glorified for it and things of that nature. And, people especially the adolescent age, they want to fit in. So they're going to continue doing things that making them fit in to look cool, look popular, because it boosts their self-esteem, their ego, and their pride, right? And it casts away that judgment. So like from a male perspective, I think it's the normalization of that look that is getting that exposure. Like, for instance, our counterparts, right? You see typically, oh, they're in a beautiful marriage, beautiful house, beautiful home, beautiful all this. But when it comes to us, even though we do have that edge to us, they glorify that edge. Oh, this person, you see it all the time in sports. Oh, this person came from this type of background. His father was in jail. His mom on drugs. And it's like, it makes us normalize those type of feelings, to our youth. And so they like, hey, this is something we always been dealing with. So why should I break the cycle if this is what we equipped to? So that's what I feel like when it comes to stereotypes. I think entertainment piece plays a large factor in um, making our youth ego and pride just that more exponential.
I like that. That's true. Social media, pop culture has a lot of influence, because again, I want to make sure we emphasize adults versus the youth or the teens that we're talking about. Adults are very influenced as well. We see everybody now since the pandemic trying to get their 15 minutes of fame on TikTok, right? So the adults are also they're also influenced by social media, but definitely want to talk about what that does for our youth. I want to shift that some, since you brought that up. What does that look like? You just mentioned, the football players or the athletes, or like certain songs, calling, young ladies out their name, or maybe romanticizing violence. Taylor, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I was actually gonna piggyback on the fact of normalization in general, right? Like we're making all of these unhealthy, toxic behaviors normal. Even when like working with the girls that I work with, a lot of times they're attracted by, the bad boys and the negativity and, and all of this aggression, oh, he loves me, that's the reason why he does it. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that behavior is just being normalized in general. So not only just the disrespect with the verbiage, but the behavior as well. We normalize cheating. Oh, there's that whole verbiage too. Jealousy and, if can't nobody else have you, I can't have you, that idea in general is just being normalized and being accepted for love. And so it really just boils down to accepting things that aren't love as love.
Very good. Yes, indeed. Ms. Kim, do you want to piggyback on that?
Yeah, well, I would just say that based on what has been transpired in our community overall, as far as the generalization and the normalization of the negative behaviors, and how it doesn't just start here, right? So the actual foundation of it is slavery. So initially, we were actually putting confines based on what somebody else dictated. Now we're doing it to ourselves. Now, because of what all things we have that are available to us, it's now that we're being enslaved by things that no longer necessarily have physical chains on us, but mental chains on us, right? And so this is what causes us to kind of get in the rat trap, or basically going around in circles and circles and circles, because we continue to actually operate in the form of the chains rather than actually breaking those, if that makes sense.
Yes, indeed. That's real. And one of our mottos with Songbird, well, that's what we stand on. We break cycles. What's the root of it? Let's figure it out. What's traumatizing the family or the young person, right? And let's get to the root and a solution. One thing you said about it comes from slavery. When I work with the youth and I go in and do groups, one thing I always tell them, one of the most important relationships you're ever going to have is with yourself. If you don't treat yourself well, you can't tell other people how to treat you, right? And what Taylor said was, we're accepting something that's love, that's really not love, right? Because of what we think, or since we're talking about pop culture and social media, what it's normalizing, right? What it's presenting to us. And so I want to take this for y'all that are listening. I think about this started really, we talking about counterparts, since Kimberly brought this up about slavery, but I think about the impact, again, we're talking about on our Black and brown babies in the African-American community. What do they see from jump? Let's just talk about the stuff that they watch, right? Because what they're watching, we know it's going to impact and influence them, but I even go as much to think about what we have been fed from cartoons, as far as what our Black and brown babies represent and what they don't, right? So that self-worth part, it starts very, very young, like the minute they come out the womb. I even think about the Disney shows. Like, I love cartoons, but I think about like Beauty and the Beast. What did Beauty and the Beast what did Beauty and the Beast teach us? I mean, I just want to throw that out. That's something simple, but what did Beauty and the Beast teach us? If you lock someone away in your house, they gonna fall in love with you. Y'all think about that for anybody that has watched. You know, if y'all really think about it, some of these cartoons, they really like they a little abusive. I just want to throw that out there, right? That's one of my favorite ones. But when I got ready for this, I was just like, so you done made the girl come stay in your house because you're not loved, you don't love you because you ugly, whatever the problem might be, right? But let's put that in reference to some of the stuff that our young people are dealing with. You know, think about that, Beauty and the Beast.
Man, it's crazy. And another one to add too, I was literally watching the new Super Mario Brothers and Bowser, right? Because he felt like Mario was going to take Princess away from him. He went and tried to kill Mario and his brother Luigi because of his love for Princess. So it's like, dang. Then he locked them away. So you spot on with the cartoon stuff. I was like, dog, dang. I was thinking about that too.
Yes. And so like that brings us into our next session, kind of healthy versus unhealthy. You know, like if we're starting from scratch again, we got to break cycles. Where is the root coming from, right? We're just talking generally, we haven't gotten to the parents or the environment yet, right? But because that slavery that came up, you know, like this is social media and pop culture again. Our kids stay plugged in all the time, right? They're getting mixed messages. And I'm a firm believer, whatever they watching at home, it's going to repeat somewhere in their life, right? So I'm saying that for all of y'all that are even on here tonight and y'all have little babies that ain't even made it to 5, 6, you know, I think about stuff, we sit them in front of the TV and we let that, you know, regurgitate over and over, whether it's Coco Melon, whether it's Dora, right? And some of that stuff, it does have hidden things, subtle things in it. So we got to be careful. Even I'm gonna say one more time, The Little Mermaid. So I got to give up my voice so I can love you. Think about that. What is that saying? Y'all, let's comment on. I don't know why I'm in cartoons, but that's where I'm at. Okay, so I got to give up my voice so I can love you. Let's talk about that, because that's a real thing. And that is abusive. It's a red flag. Think about that. Anybody want to comment on that? Anybody watching that's on Zoom or watching live, any comments? We'll take the questions and we'll present it to our panelists, but think about that.
So I would like to say something as far as the voice portion that we have as far as with our youth, because a lot, especially with our female youth and with some of the LGBT, so they actually feel that if I say something about this, or if I say that I don't like this, they have what's called the people pleasing mentality, right? Where they want to actually ensure that they're doing everything for their partner to ensure that this person is going to love them. So they'll real life do whatever it is that is actually posed to them to ensure that they maintain that particular love, not being aware that it's unhealthy at that particular point, because this then becomes not necessarily a relationship or codependency type of thing, where I'm codependent on you to ensure that whatever you do, I'm gonna make sure that I'm attached to you, or I'm gonna make sure that anything that I do makes you and keeps you here so you can be attached to me, which is unhealthy because they don't develop their own identity at that particular point. They're so wrapped up and so entangled in this other person that they don't know how to be themselves.
That's real.
Indeed, I definitely agree. And that goes back to young people loving yourself. The first relationship, some of us on here, we are believers because that's who we are. So besides God, one of the most important relationships you're going to have is with yourself, right? If you don't love you or like you, it's going to be hard for you to determine what is healthy or what is unhealthy, right? So tonight, we want to definitely talk about this, but we also want to give you some tools, right? Give you some encouragement and empowerment to love yourself. It's important that you recognize what is healthy for you and what is unhealthy for you. One of our questions, you know, and I think we've kind of hit on that, is why don't youth or young people recognize the signs of unhealthy relationships? I'm going to put that there in the Black community, because we're still in stereotypes. Why don't our young Black and brown babies recognize the signs of unhealthy relationships?
Yeah. So a lot of times those behaviors that are condemned healthy, they're not modeled for them. They're not modeled in the home. They don't grow up seeing two-parent households. They don't grow up seeing, dad love mom or mom love dad, or even grandparents, even nowadays, as the generation starts to shift, they've never seen it at all. I remember being younger myself, and, obviously me being in my 30s, I saw my grandparents, and, they modeled what that was supposed to look like. But these kids are, obviously parents are having children younger and younger these days. So they're just not being able to see that behavior modeled at all. And so not only that, but that leaves a void that's there left to feel, and that makes them vulnerable, and it makes it very easy for those negative influences to slip in and say, hey, I can do this for you, I can do this for you, I can offer you this. And at that point, like Miss Kimberly said, they're willing to compromise their whole self and their whole identity just to be open to feeling that void that was never felt in the beginning.
Yes, ma'am. We have a comment. Miss Deidre Haynes said, it's the subliminal messages that our youth are being subjected to that form or shape their idea of healthy or unhealthy relationships before they are taught the truth. So they are getting things subliminally. They're getting things in a subtle manner, especially since we're talking about social media and pop culture, right? Before they, like Taylor says, they don't even have an example. So this is what they're seeing and thinking, this is right, or this is how we should be treated. One thing I do with the groups that I go and talk to, we talk about red flags and green flags, right? And one question I say, are y'all healthy? And of course they say, yeah, we're healthy, we're healthy, so on and so forth, we're good. And the first time I asked them, so I give them these scenarios. So you and your significant other, y'all have gone out to the movies, or y'all made an agreement, and he keeps texting you every 5 minutes. Is that healthy? And they're like, and it's this whole like light bulb that just came on. And I'm like, y'all are okay with that? Like, didn't y'all say what y'all was doing and where y'all was going? I'm like, that's stalkerish. Well, miss, and it's amazing though, and I'm not judging them. I'm just trying to get them to think, because one thing in this generation, as I said, I wanted to make the significant difference between the adults and the teens, because intimate partner violence, domestic violence, all of it's about power and control. But when we're talking about our youth, we have to remember teen dating violence. We talked about what it looks like. It's abusive patterns and behaviors of control, right? It can show up as physical, it can show up as sexual, it can show up as psychological aggression, it can show up as emotional, right? But the subtle things, young people, I don't think that you realize that for those that may be in that situation, or something looks red flaggish, spreading rumors, right? That's violent, right? That's stuff like that, even the subtle things like peer pressure, gaslighting, convincing you to skip class or work when you should be at school, isolation from, if somebody is trying to isolate you, I think one of the panelists said it on here, like, I only want you for myself. I think, and you and nobody else. I think K-Scott said Bowser on the Mario Brothers, like, yeah, that's dangerous. That's dangerous, and you need to run and run quickly, right? So even in that, the things, and I say that because the things that the teens deal with, they're very subtle. And I think that may be where that misconception comes in. Is this really violent, or is this a red flag? Would y'all like to, because y'all work with youth, or work in counseling, would y'all like to kind of elaborate on what y'all are seeing, or that's subtle in some of the kids that y'all talk with?
I think the main thing that was subtle for me recently was one of my teens was in a relationship, and basically anybody she would talk to, he would kind of just wrap his arms around her, like, come on, babe, let's go this way. Let's go this way. And he was basically just smoothing to where he was keeping her isolated in some type of shape, form, or fashion. And this was whether it be girls, boys, or whoever, he would ensure that her focus was only on him, and that was it.
And go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tay.
I just wanted to piggyback that isolation piece is very, very important. And it looks different, in different situations, whether it's, having issues with your family is not seeing eye to eye. And, this person is telling you, oh, you don't need them. Oh, they don't understand you. Those type of things as well. So it could be isolation from your family, your friends, even your job. Oh, you don't need to go to work today. Come spend the day with me, that type of stuff. So that isolation piece is really big to recognize in different areas of your life.
Mhm. And even from the aspect of social media too, like for instance, I deal with a lot of kids in sports, right? And so it'd be a point where I overheard a conversation and the kid, he was just getting out of practice. It was late and he came back and the girl sent him like maybe 5 text messages. Like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? My friend saw you posted something like 10 minutes ago. How come you haven't texted me back? Boom, boom, boom. So now she's using her friend to stalk the guy, and it's like, man. And so that could be an unhealthy matter too. You know what I'm saying? It's just that little subtle thing was like, huh. Not only she stalked, like pinging him up every 5 minutes. He had practice, like he already told you he was at practice. Now you having your friend into it to check on him to make sure. So it's just this crazy thing.
Yes. And again, today we're bringing awareness for the young people that will watch the replay, or even if their parents share this, because those are, like we said, subtle things that you may not really be thinking about. I mean, as a young person, I would think it's the coolest thing. Oh, he really likes me. Like when I come out of my classroom, he's there. When I come from lunch, he's right there. When I go to my car, ooh, he's still right there, right? You might have a stalker. I just want to throw that out there. That might be some red flag material. I just want to tell you that. Or you're beautiful and you're okay with your shape, because you have to love you first. And they come and say, why are you wearing that? I don't like the way that looks on you, right? Or they say, you need to cover up, let me give you my jacket, right? Now we got a whole nother problem, right? Because you're being possessive. First of all, teens, enjoy being a teen. Enjoy being a kid while you can, because you're gonna have plenty of time to be grown, and then you're gonna want to go back and be a kid, and you can't. You know what I'm trying to say? And I'm speaking, of course, from experience, being a young mother, all of that. I'm at this point now, I'm over adulting. Let me just say that right now. I'm over it, but I cannot go back, right? So at least I can tell you to enjoy being a teen, right? Enjoy living your life, loving you, right? And let people come into your life that love you. Okay, I'm gonna get off that soapbox. All right. So we're gonna go to the next set of questions. I want to talk about the support for our babies, because this is from the perspective of the stats. And I had posted earlier that I think it was in 2022, it was stated that at least 1.5 million teens had experienced some type of dating violence by the hands of their partner or romantic other, but only 1 in 3 kids reported that. And so also, I think it was the CDC mentioned loverespect.org for y'all. That will be in the chat. Loverespect.org is for teens that are experiencing violence. It has a lot of stuff on there. So if y'all are listening, check that out, loveisrespect.org. But between October 2022 and September 2023, they logged 424,000 interactions. Half of those interactions also had demographic information, and a quarter of them were Black, right? So this is from a website, but on our national level, our folks are not reporting. Our Black and brown babies are not reporting. And so I want to ask, why do you guys think that our babies are not reporting what's happening to them?
I think, I was gonna say judgment. Judgment is the big thing. People don't want to get judged because not only is it going to affect the kid, it's going to affect the family. Then people are going to turn on the family, which now the kid feel like all that stuff is their fault. And then who knows what thoughts may come their head. They might off themselves because of all that pressure of the judgment of people now not liking them anymore. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is them not saying nothing because they don't want to be judged. And now they don't have friends. Now people don't want to talk to them. Oh, that person is this, and so I think it's the biggest thing is for the youth is about fitting in.
Yeah. And there's also a big component of guilt. with the self-blame. They feel like it was something that they did, or for some reason it was their fault, or they just don't feel like they're going to be believed, the whole saying of, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Yeah, kids are still fearful of that. You know what I mean? I just had a group with a group of young men who actually said that, oh yeah, that's still the rule, So it's still being instilled in our youth that, you're not supposed to share intimate family information.
Definitely. I think it also goes back to what Ms. Kim was saying about that slave mentality, because the cycles that are repeated, the kids that are here, this is 2024, right? They're here now, but someone came before them, right? And so those are those examples that they're seeing or not seeing, and like you said, it's 2024 and we still are saying you better not say anything that happens. And so we're talking about, our Black and brown babies versus their counterparts. All youth are important, but today we're talking about us because it's Black History Month and we need to have this discussion. It's 2024 and I can remember back in 2019, whenever stuff happened to me, we're still dealing with the same thing. Now I was a little different. I'm gonna tell on you, right? But maybe the result was not as it should be, right? So you said shame, you said guilt, maybe feeling they don't have any friends, but also if they're saying something and there are no results, then they're like, less likely to say anything if it happens again. Because remember, this is subtle. I want to make the difference, right? This is subtle. Y'all are teens, right? Now, I've met a few aggressive teens that I want to put in a headlock because they're not about that life, but they think they are, But usually when it's coming to the level of when you're grown, domestic violence is happening. It's been happening for years, right? So the whole point about it is for you to recognize it as young people so it doesn't become a cycle or a hindrance in your life. I want to talk about, because we've kind of hit on slavery, generational things, what what goes on in here, that we hear that from time to time on a lot of our panels when we're talking about people of color. One thing I think about is the places of impact. You have home, you have school, and you have community, right? These are places where young people are at all times and they're impacted at all times. And so one thing I want to talk about, because the identifying part, as far as identifying what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is dating in our culture? Because a lot of the things that I can say as a older person, or still old, trying to yell, whatever you want, wisdom, like experience, I can say some of the things I had to learn, I learned through experience, right? So, why don't we, I'm saying from my experience, and y'all may have a different experience, and that's why we're here. But like, what is dating? Like, what is dating? Because the thing that these kids think is dating is not what my mind says dating is. And because they don't have the knowledge, or they might be operating of what they saw on TikTok, that can open up for them to have some issues. So let's talk about that. In our culture, do you feel like we define what dating is to our youth?
No. The reason I say no is because a lot of conversations that we should have with our youth, as far as I'm talking about the brown and African American community, we don't. Such as the dating piece, as far as educating a girl and a boy, or however, as far as what it looks like to actually go on a date. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you are kissing or anything of that nature. You guys can actually go to a particular place and spend time together talking, playing games and that type of thing. And that's considered a date. You can educate him on how to actually, if he wants to be the man to pay for something. Okay, cool. So you bring you $10, $15 and you can pay for both of y'all to get a sandwich. Let's do that, if that's how we want to do that, right? But those conversations are not being had because there's a fear that it'll lead to sex, which then sex leads to babies, or sex leads to transmission, STDs and stuff of that nature. When honestly, if that conversation is had beforehand, before it's even getting to a date aspect, then you won't necessarily have that fear there, because you've educated them enough to be able to know, hey, this is what happens when you do this particular thing, and this is not a smart choice. Now, prayerfully, they're going to make the best decisions, but you have to allow them to actually try in order to be able to actually prove you wrong, or either prove themselves right.
Yeah, it's definitely important to educate them on boundaries and self-respect, because a lot of times, you know, they'll allow their boundaries to be crossed without understanding, like, hey, this is not okay. This is not me respecting myself. This is me, you know, going a little bit further than I should, you know what I'm saying? And if they don't know that, then it's all, you know, it gets to a point where it's too late. A lot of times, kids will equate sex with love. And it also, you know, puts them in a situation to compromise their boundaries, because now they're in these, they call them situationships, or we just talking, or, you know, all these other terms that is not dating, but you know what I'm saying? It's basically just sex and some other type of companionship, but no discussion on you know, mutual boundaries, respect, you know, are you talking to anybody else, or, you know, are we exclusive, you know? And then when they want to have that conversation, a lot of times it's too late. And then, you know, you get the response, or, oh, we just chilling, or, oh, we just kicking it, you know what I'm saying? But by that time, you're too caught up in it because you've already compromised your boundaries.
Yeah. I love what you guys are saying too. Like you mentioned boundaries and things of that nature. And I think being the communication part is like super crucial, because you gotta let a person know, like, we're doing this event with the intent to get over that next hurdle or get to that next step. And so if you communicate like, hey, this event is not what you think it is. This is for, you know, just we're friends, we're just hanging out, where it's not a date, we're just hanging out, then it'll make it at ease to not cross that boundary than what it was before, or even not even exhibit themselves into that event. You know what I'm saying? So I think boundaries is huge, but communicating those boundaries in the beginning is even more crucial, just to let, hey, this is the fence. You ain't gonna get over this fence, because if you get over this fence, there's gonna be some problems. So I think that's really crucial.
Yes, indeed. And young people, that boundary or that fence, as K. Scott says, that's your boundary, right? That's it. And when they cross it, that's it. I mean, you have the authority and the power to decide whether you are going to continue this relationship or detach from this person. If you have set your boundaries and made them plain, and they cross that boundary, that's a sign of disrespect, right? I want to continue to talk about the toxicity, or, you know, where this could possibly go if you don't respect yourself or love yourself, right? If you set boundaries for yourself, you set them because that's the boundary that you need for yourself. And if they don't ask permission to cross over and they just go ahead and do it, I would tell you to run. I'm like, because it's only going to get worse, you know, because from jump, they're being disrespectful. We have a couple of comments in the chat that I don't want to miss. I'm trying to, we have a comment from Ms. Haynes. It says judgment. I think it goes back to when we're talking about shame, but also how many truly know that these relationships are toxic. If toxicity is all they have seen, they don't know that their norm is not normal. And then Laterrence Hayes is saying social media is defining dating currently, and it is a false reality that brings the result of toxicity. Very true. All of those are very true statements. Going back to the what is dating, I think even on the part of the judgment and the shame, we had a question about dating in from us in our Black and brown youth, and how that affects them, especially when they look at their counterparts from the socioeconomic background. What does that look like? I hope that question makes sense. Kind of, sort of, no.
Can you repeat it again? I'm sorry,
So
I'm breaking it down.
we were talking about dating, right? Why is it that dating is not defined, or as a culture, we really don't define dating, some of us. And then also how that youth might feel, a Black and brown youth, when they're dealing with their counterpart from their socioeconomic background. Think about that in dating. And when I think about counterparts, I think about being in school. as a young Black girl. And one thing, stuff, not that my parents didn't have it, they just didn't give it to us, right? And I think of my counterparts, they had credit cards, they had cars, they had all this kind of stuff. They could go to the mall and get ice cream, you know, different things like that. You know, how does that also impact our judgment as young people, right? Things that we see. And I'm saying that because we have a lot of young people, and I see them daily, that put on this front, and I'm just like, you ain't about that life. What are you doing, dude? You know, what are you doing, girl? Right? But it's almost like trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? In their environment, like in that peer pressure and all the stuff that they have to deal with.
Man, that's huge. You mentioned that's huge. Like, just to give you a bit of background. So like when I was in high school, I went outside of my school district because my mom and my step-pops, they wanted me to get away from the environment we was in. And so my school was about 45 minutes out of the way. And so when I got to the stage of wanting to date and things of that nature, because of my socioeconomical status, like, you know, obviously we were living off Section 8 food stamps, my mom's SSI checks and things of that nature. And so like the school I went to, like they had it, like they was good. And so like there was times where I didn't want to take that next step or go to places because my mom wasn't able to shell out, you know, $10, $15 for me to go to the movies or to kick it with my boys. And so like early on, I had to build my own self-esteem. And it kind of goes back to what you mentioned about self-esteem. Like for me, like being from that background, like I turned that little story, like that pain that I was dealing with at home back, you know, into like as a superpower to me. I don't know how to explain it, but I use that as motivation for me. It's like, look, I already communicate. Look, I ain't got it. Like what y'all think, I ain't got that. However, how can y'all help me get to where y'all at? Like, you know what I'm saying? So I communicated with them. I didn't put up the front like, hey, I got it. Y'all see where I live. Like, you know what I'm saying? Y'all see it. Y'all know I ain't got it. So how can, you know, basically it's like figuring out that middle ground. Like, how can y'all help me to where I can be where y'all are so we can both enjoy a good time? You know, so if I, for instance, an example, if I want to go on a date with a girl, whatever, I live many counties away. You have a car. Can you come pick me up? I got a food joint right across the street. They know me from childhood. We can go there for the low and do it. So it's all about communicating in the beginning and like not compromising your self-esteem and being like, oh man, look, I got all this. Nah, we're going straight to the swap meet. We're getting those tacos right next to the Mexican joint and we're going to be there and we're going to be cool. But it all starts with like knowing who you are first. And then like communicating to them like, hey, this is what it is. And then hopefully they can find some like common ground to where y'all can meet each other and it balances out that difference in the socioeconomic statuses. So that was just me from my story. Like, you know, that's how I was able to, you know, fight through all that.
I think it also makes a huge difference when we're thinking about socioeconomic status. We're thinking about, you know, the area that you're living in, the type of school that you're going to, the crowd that you're trying to please, or the crowd that you're trying to fit into. And you know, like you said, a lot of it is a facade, you know, like these kids are chasing this idea of, you know, trying to be somebody or be with somebody or be worthy of somebody when, you know, in reality, you don't even know who that person is on the inside. You're just going based off, you know, the J's and the stacked jeans and the polos, you know what I mean? Like you're chasing something that you don't even know what is on the inside. And so it's also about, you know, just instilling those firm, you know, healthy boundaries in order for them to recognize those red flags and things like that, because that like we were saying, social media too has a huge influence on just painting these pictures of, you know, what love looks like, or, you know, what popularity is, all of that, you know. And so these kids definitely need to be educated on, you know, healthy boundaries and self-worth.
And sorry to add on to that too, I think it also will help for the parents to be comfortable with themselves too. Like from our background, like us living in Section 8, on my mom SSI checks, obviously we didn't have a lot, right? We lived off $400 a month. A quarter of that goes to the rent, and then a quarter of that goes to DirecTV, and the other third of it goes to the car note. So we didn't have a lot, right? So it's like a lot of times my mother wouldn't let me spend the night at other people's house because she didn't want to feel as though we were less than. So she was pouring that her self-esteem on me, which caused that ripple effect to where it's like it's just casting on to the next one. So I think from a parent standpoint too, don't put the weight on your children, because that children got to carry that burden, which is going below their self-esteem too. So I think for me, like, it was like communicating with mom, like, mom, we cool. Like, I'm not worried about it. So you ain't got to be worried about it either. And so I think that played a big factor in all that stuff too.
And to piggyback on what you said as far as that particular thing goes, and what I said about like generational curses and stuff of that nature, oftentimes the particular worry that a child actually experiences is all based on their perception as far as what they're viewing their parents and what they're experiencing. So for me and my particular social economic status, at the particular time where I was in high school, my mom didn't have the monies for me to do cheerleading or anything of that nature. So in order for her not to have to worry or for me to ask her for anything, I got a job. And in me getting a job, I ensured that whatever she needed as far as that particular aspect, as far as cable or anything like that, if I had it, I gave it to her. And that made the dynamic strong, but it also gives the child more so of a responsibility than they need, which then puts a burden on them because they're concerned about how their parent operates and what their parent is actually struggling through. And then it forces them to actually be able to actually be put into a parent standpoint where you don't have that other man, you don't have that man in a home. And so therefore you stand in that particular place and you actually operate as a companion for your parent, which then becomes a toxic thing too.
Mm.
That's good, because the next question I was going to ask you, which I think y'all are y'all are on it, was what generational traumas might be present in Black communities that are affecting how you form relationships. And so y'all have already kind of tapped into that. I don't know if anybody in the audience wants to add or has a comment, but definitely parentification is definitely loud in our community. I'm the oldest child, and so there are just things that are expected of you to do. You're supposed to watch over your brother, you know, if mom and daddy are not home. And so what happens though, and I'm gonna flip this, what it does, it makes you very independent and very strong and very wise sometimes, but beyond your years, before your time, right? So there's also a catch-22 that causes a conflict, because now I've been so independent and I've operated in thus when I get into trying to attach or make relationships, I'm really not 15, because in my mind, I've been doing stuff that a 20-year-old, I've been taking care of the house. You know, I'm trying to say I've been working, I keep my grades up, you know, I got all this knowledge, but I'm 15, right? The kids my age, I don't want to talk to them. They boring. Let me just be honest, right? They boring and they not on my level, right? And so what happens is I end up tapping into something that's older, right? Maybe something that my parents would not prefer, whether the relationships is healthy or unhealthy. And that is a dynamic, because that's a generational thing. You know, think about it. We talked about slavery and different things. I think for so when our kids deal with stuff, sometimes in my head, I shake my head, because I'm just like, there's nothing new under the sun. When we came out of slavery, or that time, I can think even about my parents, you had 14-year-olds married to 20-year-olds, or married to even 30 and 40-year-olds, because that's what they did. You know what I'm trying to say? That's the type of mentality that we came out of, right? And so here we are coming into the decade of the 90s and the 2000s, and when we hear of a 15-year-old with a, oh my God, and I'm thinking, this is a cultural thing. It's still a cultural thing, right? Whether it came from us being enslaved or bondage or whatever, we are still dealing with the after effects of that. And I feel like it's still somewhat, maybe indirectly, some of our young people, our Black and brown youth, deal with that. Even from our counterparts in the Latin community, we know at 15, they grown. The quinceañera, that's it, right? If they finish school, great. If they make it, great, right? But if Uncle, as my kids say, if Edgar comes over here and marries them, then that's great too. You know what I'm trying to say? So again, we know, and I'm specifically saying because from a cultural perspective, our relationships are different, because again, it's based on our environment, our home, right, where we are in the community, what we see, all of that is definitely impactful. But that's one of those generational traumas that I feel that we still deal with today. Even in the fact that Taylor was saying, you know, sometimes the grandparents or the moms are younger, so on and so forth, right? But I feel like that's a cycle that's been going on since the beginning. I'm 46 years old, and it's still, you know what I'm trying to say, it's still something that is going on. Does anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think those are very, very important points of like the hyper independence that comes from parentification. You know, all these expectations that the parents place on the children. You know, it also blurs the lines a little bit for the kids, because it's like, you want me to be grown, but not grown. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you want me to be grown in this area. I have all these responsibilities and all these extra things that I have to do. But then when it comes to me socializing, you want to put limits. And then that's when a lot of times you see the parents and the child having conflicts. Also, you know, our culture has a lack of availability, mostly relating to like socioeconomic status. The parents are in survival mode. They don't have the availability to sit down and have those deep conversations with you. And sometimes the parents even assume that the kid is fine because they are so hyper independent, right? They're assuming that they're not having any of these issues with boundary setting or self-esteem or anything like that. But the key point is the child helping the parents meet their needs leaves the child's needs unmet. And that's where it comes in. You know, the kids have trouble setting boundaries. The kids have trouble with people pleasing, you know, wanting to please the parents, and it transfers over into those other relationships.
Indeed, indeed. Good points. Very good points. The comment in the chat is Deidre saying they were marrying children and treating them as such, which opened the door for violence that gets passed down through generations, especially if children are born into this marriage and witness this behavior. So most definitely something that is totally dysfunctional is normalized, right? And it repeats generationally, most definitely. So we have to definitely have that conversation so we can break those cycles. I want to ask this question, and we're going to go into just a little bit more about disclosure of assaults and the support for our young people. But do you think our Black and brown youth are groomed to accept being violated?
It depends. It depends on their household and their environment. And the reason I say it depends on their household and their environment is because if Johnny has seen his mom get punched in the face at least 5 times every week, and then you know, he's a guy whom doesn't necessarily communicate or anything of that nature, and doesn't know how to communicate, and then therefore he goes and attempts to try to talk to this girl, and this girl then tell him, no, I don't want to talk to you, but then he hauls off and punches her. This is because he's seen this particular thing in his household, and vice versa. If Annie is seeing her dad assault her mom on a daily basis, then if a guy was to come up to her with them having a relationship and stuff of that nature, even if she says no, she sees her mom violated. So if she sees her mom violated, then how is she to know that her no means no?
I just want to tell somebody your no is important and your no is powerful. If you're saying no, let your no mean no. I just want to piggyback on that. Thank you, Ms. Kimberly. Most definitely. And I think from the perspective of the generation that we're in right now, that particular question, and I think about that because we talked about, you know, what goes on in this house stays in this house, right? Also from the perspective of the school, right? I think about schools. Where are our teens usually at? Where do they spend most of their time? They could come from a good home, right? A foundation, have a good foundation, but they're not always in our eyesight, right? And so they go to school, they go to the gym, they go out, whatever they do, sports, all types of environments that are supposed to be created to protect them. The school system, for example, they have mandatory reporting laws, but when a child comes to you, and I'm saying this because we're talking about our Black and brown babies, and I've seen it happen, and I don't even work in the school. I'm contracted outside of the school, and I will shut a school down because I have seen how our Black and brown babies are treated when they bring something. There are a few advocates like yourselves and myself that are there to be mouthpieces and to help them, but the majority of the schools do not have that. They have a record of this kid's been getting in trouble since he was 5, or this is going on, or they know more about their home life, and the socioeconomic status in the stereotype is, oh, this is just how it goes because this is how the Black kid lives, or this is how the brown baby lives, right? And so from that perspective, the dismissiveness, when they do come to you, sometimes they might not look at like them telling you directly what's happening, because if they've been traumatized or victimized and they're triggered or they're processing, that may take you as a professional, to understand what pattern am I seeing every day when little Lisa or Bobby comes in here, right? Like in January, straight A student. Here we are in March and something has shifted, right? And I want to ask the question to you guys as professionals, has there ever been a time, whether intentionally or not, because y'all are human too, right? And y'all are dealing with a lot as well, right? Where you have dismissed someone's abuse or dismissed possible, victimization because it was subtle? Has there ever been a time? Think about that. That's a thought question. And I mean, for all of us that may work with youth or interact in youth, again, school, home, community, in some form or fashion, not that just for the professionals, but has there ever been a time when a young person came to you or you're observing their behavior and you dismissed it?
I don't think I've ever specifically just dismissed it, just being a mandated reporter, but there are times where I have questioned the validity of a child's disclosure. And it had a lot to do with the family structure, because the family appeared to be so functional and well kept. And it actually turned out to be abuse that was happening within the family. And so it goes back to the child having those feelings of self-blame and confusion because they know their abuser and this is someone that they loved and that they trusted. And so, sometimes the disclosure is not one event, it's a process, right? It's like they drop these little subtle hints, but they're not just coming out and saying it, right? And so knowing the abuser is also something that dictates how easy it is for them to come to that disclosure, because they're confused about how it happened to, from someone that they knew and someone that they trusted, right? And so their trust is all messed up. They question themselves, and it kind of makes the disclosure hard to read through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to piggyback off of Taylor, I've definitely had at least one or two, I know one for sure, where the actual details to identify and successfully help this person was really hard, because the in them coming and disclosing, initially their disclosure was someone else, and then it became someone else, and then it became someone else. And so it's identified in the behavior that something happened, but you can't pinpoint nor can you provide the best assistance because you really cannot identify whom is the offender to be able to successfully help.
And I think when you said who is the offender to successfully help, I'm gonna turn that over to K Scott and see if you had, because you deal with batterers. K Scott deals with batterers. We have we're talking about those that are victimized, right? But he actually deals with those that have done the abuse, right? What is your thought about that?
Yeah, I think from a standpoint, it's always it's not my fault. That's what everything comes to. It's not my fault. And it's always about, for me, it's about challenging people's perspectives on how they view a certain thing to kind of get to the root of, so that they can see it, not to where I can see it, to where they can see it. And so it's just asking questions around the certain event so that they can uncover it. And then after we uncover that certain event that may have happened and how it happened and how it led up to that, then we can pinpoint the next following steps. But the first step for me is just always challenging that perspective that comes to my mind so I can unravel it and see where the root of it was and how that pattern got to this certain point right here. And so that's what I would say. Currently, in my demographic, it's typically it's rooted in a lot of ways, but a lot of times it does stem from childhood experiences. It seems like, just being from what they seen, and then being in their socioeconomic environment, how that is portrayed as more so manly and a man thing type to do, as far as being controlling of your woman. And in the fact of, oh, if their boys be like, oh, your woman, you let your woman do this, and then they will then try to get that power and control. So it's like challenging their beliefs on like so many different steps to identify what that root cause of it is. And so there may be that subtle thing, just by what I said, that little subtle thing is like, hey, yeah, my homeboy was like, he was like, for instance, he was like, man, I ain't gonna let my homeboy call me a simp because I let my girl do that. Like, that could be that somebody, oh, you know what I'm saying? And like, okay, then you start asking questions, and then they start unraveling back to unfold. So it's just those little subtle things like that that makes you think and makes you want to go back. So that's one thing I would say.
Yeah, I think this is a good question, because we are here to protect, right? To help and not to do more harm. Just from the perspective of all of us to be culturally aware, right? What does that mean? That a lot of times that's observing behaviors, because sometimes when they don't talk, their behavior will talk for them, of course, right? We'll see a manifestation of behavior, or we'll see a change. One thing, as y'all were talking in this question about, do we think they're being groomed to accept the violations, so on and so forth. And I think about when I was doing my I was taking my addictions class, and one thing my professor told me is, if the family did not need a drug addict, it would not have produced one. And what I'm saying is, usually when abuse manifests, right, we know something is broken, of course, right? But I'm saying that behavior will let us know something is going on. So it made me think from the perspective of the addict is trying to cover up something by taking the substance, right? Like, something's broken, maybe somebody hurt me. When I take this, it makes me feel better. I go into a whole nother world and a whole other dimension, right? And so it gave me a different perspective of dealing with youth, or when I see babies, because I'm like, well, shoot, their behavior to me is what is letting me know something is not quite right in the house, right? Maybe it's not at home, but maybe it's somebody coming into the home, right? Something has changed. And I think for all of us, not to take, for parents that are watching this, for professionals that are watching this, that we do not take their behavior, our kids' behavior, not that we take it lightly, but I think it goes back to a little bit, sometimes we may stereotype. Like I heard Tay say, because they came from a prominent family, there cannot be any abuse going on. Check it. I'm trying to say, like, at the end of the day, don't dismiss anything. It might be a process, right? It might be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and on Friday, bingo, there it is, right? But I feel like all of us, because we're talking about teen dating violence awareness, and how we can help our youth, how it's impacting our youth in the Black community, but also what is the solution, right? We've talked about generational curses. We've talked about, what they see, like all of that. What is the solution to help our kids recognize and identify, what's healthy, what's not healthy, right? To identify that, this behavior right here is a little questionable, right? So I feel like, just for everybody that's watching, for us not to be dismissive. Now, there's no way that we can force anybody, whether it's a child or adult, whatever, to disclose. I feel like when you force, you can do more harm. You know, you definitely can do more harm, but you don't want to dismiss. Hold on one second. You don't want to dismiss, you know, what they're saying to you, right? It might take you a little bit to put that puzzle piece together, but it also goes back to the statistics that we said, why our babies don't disclose, right? Because they feel like they don't have the support, because I've said this before and nothing was done. Even in that, that's dismissive. And it might be unintentionally dismissive, but it's still dismissive. If there's anything that I can encourage educators or parents or anyone that deals with youth, is to give the youth their voice back. Like that part, that I'm still thinking about Little Mermaid. Give them their voice. Don't let them lose their voice. A lot of times that observation, especially working in kids in schools, when you see a kid that doesn't have much to say, when they're not really vocal, someone has taken their voice from them, right? And that's the kid we definitely want to pay. We want to pay attention to all, but that's the baby we definitely want to keep our eyes on, because they have lost their voice somewhere, and there's no telling what's going on in their head, what's going on physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that. As we're coming to a close, from the panel discussion, I want to open it up again for anybody that's watching Facebook or here in the Zoom room. Please feel free to comment or post your questions. One comment in the chat is, many of our kids suffer because we are not aware of available resources. So think about that. We've talked about the socioeconomic status. We've talked about the parentification, right? All of those are forms of resources for parents to be able to be successful, right, in raising our babies. What do those resources look like besides counseling, right? Besides even, you know, government assistance, like things that can keep the family healthy, safe, and whole. We do need more of that, right? Those are some things, because I'm sure we will come back again and discuss some of this at a later time this year. But as we're having these conversations, yes, we need the conversations. Conversations heal and it brings awareness, but also as a community here, what are some solutions? And I guess the question would be, how do we promote healing among victimized youth? And the question was, when there is no felt safety, why our kids don't feel safe? So how do we assist them? We're talking about in a world that they live in, right? In our communities where our Black and brown babies are, where we can't even call the police sometime because we don't know what's going to happen when they show up at the doorstep, right? Are they going to take mama? Are they going to take daddy? Are they going to take brother and sister, right? That's part of that staying quiet, right? How can we promote healing, especially when they don't feel like there is felt safety? And that might be a loaded question, but I'm going to ask it. And that might be a one we might have to come back to.
I think it's first and foremost, I think it starts with validation for the child's experience, and providing them with some form of a safe place, whether it's you know, somebody that this kid is willing to talk to, give them an opportunity to spend some time with that person, and just give them that safe space, you know, whatever that looks like. And then, like I said, going back to the validation piece, it's just very important to not shut down any type of emotions that are related to abuse, because of, like we said, the guilt, the shame, the blame, all of that, that's already susceptible to keeping them from coming out about it. And then, of course, you have the option, get the child in therapy, even if, you know, but of course, there's still a stigma, right? Within our community, there's still a stigma on mental health. So that's why I say the first step is to get them someone that they feel comfortable talking to. Obviously, that would be the first step, even before sitting them in front of a stranger.
I think that like based on your organization, based on my organization and others, as far as having those connections with the schools, as far as actually communicating to them that, hey, so if you have someone or you have a child who's struggling in some type of shape or fashion and not comfortable with talking to you, that we have the ability to be able to talk to them and just help them to either get comfortable with us or either get comfortable with someone within their circle. And then just depending on whom all has suffered from these particular things, there's possible small groups that they can actually get into so they don't necessarily feel alone or isolated behind what it is that they've actually experienced, just ensuring that those safe places are accessible to them and they make sense as far as where they are in their lives at that point.
Yes, ma'am. I definitely agree, and someone definitely, we're in the same, of course, someone in the chat, Keidra said group therapy. One thing I want to address, because as we're getting ready to close, we want to be proactive, right? Continuing to have panels and education like this is definitely helpful. Also, solutions and resources. One thing Adrian has put in the chat, parents can be jealous when kids find that safe space outside of the parent. And that is definitely true. Parents, I want to encourage you. One thing I have said, my kids are grown, right? And I still would hope someone would even help them at their adult age, and my grandchildren, right? It doesn't always have to come from you, right? And don't take it personal, because the whole goal is that our child or our children or our youth get the help that they need, right? As long as the person is not killing their spirit, telling them to do something that's outside, that's going to cause things to be more problematic, that's half of the issue. We're talking about the generational traumas, right? Because we have what we say in here stays in here. I can remember, well, these are my kids, and you can't tell my kids what to do. Like, there are so many things, right? But you need help, right? The kid's behavior is here. You need help. It's loud, 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 right? But then the kid is like, there's no sense for me to tell y'all because y'all ain't gonna give me the help I need, right? Or I feel like I can talk to so-and-so. Well, what do you have to talk to so-and-so about? I'm your mom, I'm your dad, right? So for us, from a cultural perspective, right? Sometimes we have to swallow our pride. We should swallow our pride, because at the end of the day, we want our children to be successful. We want them to get help. Even with what I do in school, we go, and that's what I talk about, healthy relationships. I have parents that literally have a fit, like, what is she talking to my kids about? And it's group, right? It's something to help the kid, right? But a lot of us is people of color, because what are you finna feed my kid? And then again, the behavior. Usually when you have a parent like that, and I'm talking to y'all that'll watch now in the replay, if you act like that, you telling me what you doing in the house. You know what I'm saying? What's going on in the house where you are has this baby in such a chokehold. You know what I'm trying to say? You won't help, but you got to be there every step of the way. For me, from a mental health or counseling perspective, that shows me something is broken. That goes back to us not dismissing those behaviors and being aware. We got some more comments in the chat. Let's focus on the family unit as a whole. We have to help them as a unit. Otherwise, we open these wounds and place them back in the home, and they continue to bleed on one another. Keidra saying that's another reason why they'll shut down, because they're concerned about their parents' feelings over their own. So they suppress their feelings and act out all the more, right? Because in this moment, it's really not about my feelings. It's about, like, get over it and let's get some help, right? We can come back to these feelings later, but whatever is manifesting at this point, or these decisions that our kids are making, or, why do you not love yourself or know your self-worth? We talked about that you keep attaching to something that's unhealthy, right? But I also say this, we have to take our responsibility in that as well, generationally, from that perspective, as well as, from parenting, so on and so forth. There's a level of accountability on all sides, if that makes sense, getting the child or the youth to be able to feel safe enough to speak, but also wanting them to get that help. So again, parents, I encourage you, if you have a youth or you observe their behavior, right? Even having these small conversations with them, like, are you healthy? Like, why are you why are you healthy? Why do you think you're healthy? It might start with a simple conversation as, do you love you? Right? Do you like you? Little small conversation starters will, open up a whole lot. I think that's part of the culture thing as well. Generationally, we don't know how to have conversations. We don't know how to communicate, right? For so many years, I remember my cousins would say, you think you white. Let me just throw that out there, right? Because my parents, I talk different, or because I would ask questions and they would be looking, because that didn't happen at their house. Even though we came from the same bloodline, that didn't happen at their house, right? My mom and dad, encouraged other things, and I'm thankful. Now, everything we didn't talk about, but some of the stuff, just even in that's stereotypical, right? And it shut me down a little bit, because every time I said something, I was getting hacked at, or they were, making fun of me or something. So for a little bit, it silenced my voice. So even in that's a generational thing. We don't know how to have simple conversations, right? Let's bring conversation back. Let's talk to our kids, right? Let's talk to our parents, right? Bring the conversations back. So the last question, and I think we probably have covered it, but how do we start being allies with our youth and having these hard conversations, right? Because I know they are not going to all be easy, but how can we be allies with our youth, with our teens, and start having the hard conversations, the ones that they didn't talk to us about, that we had to figure out? How do we do that?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is taking out yourself, right? Removing yourself, not making it personal, being open to receive whatever it is that the child has to say without personalizing it. Because a lot of times we'll get defensive, or, we'll, like we said, totally dismiss whatever it is the child's saying, just because, we have to read between the lines and encourage that open dialogue. Sometimes that stuff hurts, when a child tells you about yourself. Have you ever been told about yourself by a child? Yeah, it's not easy to receive. It's not. And so you got to be able to really look in the mirror and reflect on what the child is saying versus listening to respond.
I agree with that, Taylor. And also, to make it fun or make it to where it's not so serious, you can say, hey, I'm gonna take my parent hat off today. I'm gonna take it off. And whatever it is that you got to say to me while I got my parent hat off, that's what you say. Okay. And then we can actually go back to me putting my parent hat on after you get done telling me what it is you're gonna tell.
I think that's a good point, because for me, it was always trying to act like I was not shocked by whatever they would say. So I think the first thing is, as parents, we have to have an open mind. Yes, there were some times when I was privy to conversation, I was like, oh my God. But I never let them think that it was that big of a deal that we couldn't handle it, or that they would stop talking to me. So I was always open-minded to whatever it was they might say. Of course, then I'm going in behind closed doors, I'm praying and interceding and tearing and all of that. But we have to have an open mind and letting them know that we as their parents are a safe place, that we can allow them to open up. And I love that idea of taking off that parent hat, even if for that moment, to allow them to feel like, okay, I really can talk to mom and dad. Because a lot of times we as parents, we feel like, yes, I've created that safe place, but in actuality, we've created that safe place with stipulations. I'm okay with you talking to me about your life goals. I'm okay with you talking to me about what you ate today and all of that. But do I really want to have those tough conversations? Am I really ready, prepared, and equipped to have those conversations? Because I can remember I was very intentional about making sure I had some of those difficult conversations with my kids, because my mom did not do that. My dad did not do that. So I had to learn not to live by the example that I was given, but to create what I wanted my kids to have. So we can't be afraid to create something different for our kids as they're coming behind us, because that's what we want to be able to pass along, those healthy skills, and not continuing that toxicity that has just been, because it's what we've seen, it's what we've been taught. It's what we've learned, and it's what we're living in. We don't have to allow them to live what we've lived in. Allow them to develop their own truths and to set healthy boundaries and to establish those right relationships.
Very good. Indeed. Take your parent hat off. I think that needs to be a t-shirt somewhere. I don't know where I'm gonna wear it. Take your parent hat off, right? Sometimes you got to take that parent hat off so you can take your parent hat off, get out your feelings so you can hear, right? And then you can help, right? Also, another thing with parents, remember you were once a child. That part. Remember you were once a child. And the third thing I like to say, they get it from their mama. No, I'm just saying. Anyway, just throwing that out there. So, yes, as we close out.
I was gonna add one more thing. I'm sorry, sis. And because you reminded me of it when you said, remember that we were once a child. So even in that, giving them that grace to know, even if you do make a mistake, even if you do fail, I'm still going to support you. We're going to come together. We're going to get a game plan for how we're going to get you back on track. And I was never afraid to let my kids know the mistakes that I made, because I wanted them to learn from what I went through. I went through it, so now you don't have to. But if you choose to, I'm going to be here to pick you up when you fall down. But you don't have to take that route. You don't have to go that route. But just learning to give our kids grace. We want it from God, so we've got to give it to them so that when they do make those mistakes, we can welcome that prodigal son or daughter back in and let them know, okay, now let's get it right. Let's get it back on track.
Yes, ma'am. And so at this time, we have about 6 minutes. I want to open it up for anyone that is here in the Zoom room. If you have any comments or anything that you would like to ask our panelists tonight.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to say this was really good, very powerful. Just giving me more insight as a parent of 4 children that are in different stages of their life. I truly appreciate just hearing all of the professional feedback and also just hands-on experience from other parents. So of course, I'm not in this alone, but just truly appreciate the opportunity to have this panel available. And thank you again, Stephanie, for putting this together. Although you put it together, I believe a month and some change ago, if I'm not mistaken, but it definitely is for such a time as this for myself. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, you're welcome. Anyone else have any comments before we hear our last words from our panelists? Anybody else? Okay. All right. So with that, first thing I always want to say, we want to make sure that you are aware, if you are a teen that is experiencing domestic violence, teen dating violence, again, loveisrespect.org is a resource for you. Text LOVEIS to 22522. What I want to say to you as youth, as young people, especially our youth, our Black and brown babies, we love you. Love yourself. You have to love yourself. When you don't love yourself, you open up yourself to become easy prey for someone to take advantage of you, for someone to mistreat you. You love yourself. You have to know that every day you get up, you're wonderfully and you're fearfully made. You have to speak positive words over yourself. Affirm yourself daily. If no one else affirms you, you affirm you, right? And also acknowledge what you feel might be a flaw. I mean, because we're human, right? And then I'm going to tell you, young people, get to safe people that can support you. Just like some of our people in the audience just said, people that support you, that show you grace, they're going to hold you accountable, right? But you're able to speak, you're able to use your voice. Don't let anybody take your voice. No one should be able to take your voice from you. And I'm going to tell you, treat yourself with love and respect. Treat yourself well, because you deserve it. With that being said, panelists, thank you so much for showing up. Thank you so much for speaking on this topic. We thank you for the service and serving our youth, serving our families, serving our communities. We are honored for you to be here on this panel today. Would you guys like to have any last words or anything you would like to say to any of the teens or youth or families they might catch the replay?
So for any teens out there who are dealing with any type of abuse, I just want you all to know that you are loved, you are seen, and you are valued. Focus on your healing so that you can be your best possible self, even if you feel stuck, even if you feel trapped, even if you feel like there's no other way out. Heal and focus on your future so that you can create that door to get out.
Love it. And then I'll just piggyback and say, just be a challenger of old beliefs, changing that belief system and be the change that you ultimately want to see, so you don't have to repeat what's been already done and kind of end that cycle of whatever it was at that moment. So just be the change you want to see.
I would like to say from anyone who is actually experiencing violence in any type of shape, form, or fashion, being passive does not mean peaceful. You do not have to stand and take and be abused, brutalized in any type of shape, form, or fashion because you want someone's presence. You have the ability to love and appreciate your own presence. So utilize it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Again, one of the most important relationships you are ever going to have is with yourself. It's with you. So be your authentic self. Treat yourself well. You deserve it. Once again, it's your girl, Stephanie Ray Songbird with the Songbird and Me organization. Thank you all for tuning in. For more information and upcoming events, you can go to thesongbirdandme.com. If you have questions or you want to connect with the panelists or you need services that are here today, please reach out to thesongbirdandme@gmail.com so we can get you connected. As always, we love you. And there is absolutely nothing that you can do about it. Let us continue to break cycles and continue to bring awareness for us to see change. Again, we want to see the change. We want to be the change that we want to see. You all have a blessed evening, and we will see you next time. Bye.